Well, personally, I think we should talk about the elephant in the room, which is not either of us, luckily, but about podcasting itself. You know,
Mm.
this is our first episode, so what are our expectations for the first episode, and
All
just
right.
judging from podcasting in general, like what are your impressions of a general podcast, and how do you think we will fit into that?
Mm.
Um,
Well, I think first of all, a podcast usually has some kind of focus
mm,
a lot of the time. We're not looking at any of the really big ones, such as a Joe Rogan, but a lot of the time when people start a podcast, it's because they have a certain niche to come into.
mm,
Either they're professionals in a field, they know a lot about it, or they're big fans of something and then they want to talk about that in general.
mm.
However, we're not good at anything in particular.
No, not
Um,
really. We're kind of talentless in whichever regard you could probably fit us into. What we do have is basic knowledge of a lot of things, but
exactly.
not exactly. I wouldn't call us experts at anything.
No.
Um,
So yeah, a lot of podcasts are in a niche, but I don't think we necessarily are. Maybe we will end up being. Maybe it ends up happening, but at the moment, I think it's just whatever we feel like talking about. We're both psychology students, so
mm,
um, we might be talking about psychology, philosophy, but also just anything else, whether it's some of our interests, such as gaming
mm,
or music
yeah,
or whatever. And it could even be real world stuff if there are any topics that are relevant for um, the specific time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, anything relevant. By real world stuff, I presume you mean like real world problems affecting the broader, you know.
Yeah, and
Um,
also both that, but also just real world stuff in our like
oh
context.
yeah. So
Um,
so the point that we're making is it's basically gonna be anything we want at a particular time. You know, like we're not gonna be one thing. We're not gonna be boxed into one certain category of podcasting.
exactly.
Um,
Whatever whatever comes to us in the moment, I think
yeah, I agree.
makes sense. Yeah.
And as you said, we are psychology students, so maybe that will. I mean, it's not like he and I just talk about psychology all day.
No.
That actually rarely does happen. We go to the same university, so if we do talk about psychology, it's often because we need to read in the same textbook, and we have the same material we need to study, and that might fill out some parts of our conversation. But it's, I mean, usually we don't really go into depth about it. You know, what did you think about the neurochemistry that we learned about today? That's not,
Yeah, no.
no, we just, when it's just you and I, we usually just fuck around, you know.
Exactly. Um, and especially also because we're very new to psychology. We've only been studying for about a year. So, um, perhaps once we get more into it, we actually feel like we know stuff because
Mm,
I still don't really feel like I know anything
yeah.
concrete in psychology. I know a lot of like bips and bobs around the place, but like nothing where I'm like, all right, I know this, you know? Um,
Mm.
so in that sense, maybe once we get further down the line, we'll have more to talk about. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have a particular part of psychology that I feel like I just know intrinsically yet, at least not to its full extent. But there are, um, I've definitely learned something since we've started studying psychology. I know more about psychology now than I did back then,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
given the fact that we're in our uh, third semester, thank God, because if we didn't, that'd be such a waste of fucking time and
For
money.
sure. Yeah.
Because books are fucking expensive, too expensive, especially this semester.
Yeah.
So we're not exactly experts per
No.
se, but
And that's also to say that most of the topics we'll get in on and talk about are not topics where either of us are professionals or we know everything about it. So don't take what we say as fact.
mm,
It's mostly opinions we have on things.
yeah. Of course, people can reasonably distinguish between things that are just common sense, like that is a fact. But of
Of
course,
course.
do have your wherewithal when it comes to what we're talking about, because we don't exactly we're not we're not experts So
No.
so what, basically the atmosphere we hope that we can create around this podcast is just it's just two friends talking. Let's just sit and talk about something that we find interesting to talk about, and hope it goes well.
Hopefully.
Do you have, like, I don't know if you actually do listen to podcasts of any sort. Like, do you listen to Joe Rogan? Do you like his type of podcasting, or?
Well, the thing with Joe Rogan is that he has a lot of different topics. He does everything. He gets different people on, and I think it all depends on if there's something I enjoy. Sometimes I'll see a certain, because he also uploads a lot of clips. Sometimes I see a clip. I especially like a lot of his fight content, because he's in the UFC, but he also does a lot on boxing and stuff. So when I see like a clip where he's talking to someone about that, I often watch. And for example, some of his talks about animals, like would you rather get mauled by a grizzly bear or a lion and stuff, you know. But I'm not a frequent watcher of him. What I mostly watch with podcasts is specific YouTubers that I like, and then I watch their podcasts.
Do you have anyone you want to name drop, or?
I don't know if you know it, but the TMG podcast, Cody and Noel.
Well, if you said TMP, I would know it. It was so close, but that's a podcast I used to listen to. But who is it?
TMG, it's the Tiny Meat Gang is
Tiny Meat Gang.
Yeah. It's Noel Miller and Cody Ko. They're just two like comedians / YouTubers that I watch a lot.
So they're like stand-up comedians.
Yeah, they started out as YouTubers.
Yeah.
But then they slowly and they like made videos together, but then they slowly transitioned into being like stand-up comedians. But I mostly watch their either content or their podcasts, and and then some. What about you?
I might check that one out. I mean, when it comes to Joe Rogan, for me, of course I like his animal talks. When it comes to podcasting, I think that's that's kind of a universal thing that people like about Joe Rogan. It's when he speaks so enthusiastically about, oh, who would win, a gorilla or a grizzly bear?
Yeah.
And then he just goes into this fucking, and he's so enthusiastic when he talks about it. And he's like, the bear would absolutely fuck you. Like, that's always the way he speaks about it.
And then there's some other person who's also very passionate about the other side, and then they just go back and forth about something that really doesn't matter very much, but they make it matter.
But it's a fun thought experiment. For example, the grizzly bear and the gorilla.
Mm-hmm.
But the fighting aspect of Joe Rogan, I haven't paid that much attention to because I know little about what is the category called? Fighting sports?
Yeah, martial arts or fighting sports. Combat sports.
Combat sports.
Yeah.
I know very little about it. I don't know what a good technique is when you're in a fight in the octagon, but
yeah.
But the thing about Joe Rogan is that he can just kind of make it understandable, even though you're not an expert in it yourself.
Yeah.
You can just translate it in a way that also doesn't make you feel stupid.
Yeah. He often, especially with fighting, he explains when he talks about some specific technique. He'll like demonstrate, kind of, not like properly get up but he'll like tell you what it is.
Yeah. He'll I remember one time when he had I don't know if you're familiar with the comedian Brian Callen, but no, it's one of Rogan's close friends. And one time he had Brian Callen on his podcast, and he demonstrated exactly like you said he does. He just stood up and he just grabbed Brian Callen's leg and he just started fucking like, okay, this is how we kick. He tried to teach him like the signature Joe Rogan kick. It was just he does that a lot. The physical stuff is also a fun part. Also when he does bear impressions, like he does such a realistic bear impression, it's almost uncanny.
Yeah, one thing about Joe Rogan is also he knows a lot of things, but like us, I mean, we don't know as much as him, but like he's not outside of like combat sports. He talks about a lot of topics that he doesn't know that much about, but he's knowledgeable enough that he can have a conversation with experts that he brings on. But that's also what one of the biggest like criticisms of him is that oftentimes he brings on different professionals or like experts, and then because he's also not an expert, he can't really naturally like counter any points. So it's often like, and then people will see one from like he'll bring on a person who's like a scientist, like climate scientist who'll talk about the effects of climate change, and then I'll bring on another scientist who's very against climate change, and then they both kind of just give out their message, and there's not much pushback. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people have criticized his podcast for, that they're very like especially controversial opinions come on, and then they just like they're allowed to speak freely in a way.
Yeah, and I've also heard him speak about him being angered by the fact that he receives criticism from that, because I think his point was, well, what do you want? Do you want me to just fucking counter everything they say that I don't agree with? That's not really a conversation. A conversation consists of first you listening to the person speaking to you, you processing it, and then responding. But if you already have predisposed fucking opinions already that you're thinking about, that fills your head while the person is still speaking, and then you say something not based on what they said, but what you thought while they were speaking, that's not really what I consider a conversation. And I hope we don't fall into that trap doing this. I mean, that would be quite unfortunate, because we want to have a conversation. That's one of the criteria for doing a podcast.
It would be a bit sad if there wasn't a conversation.
It would.
It just ends after one time because we both just
get
angry and it just.
Yeah, I mean, there would probably be a way to make it comedic, in a way. Just I remember when I don't know, Good Mythical Morning. Have you ever watched?
I know of them. They were quite popular.
Red and Link.
Yeah.
I remember quite some years ago they made an April Fool's joke where they just uploaded a video where they had the intro like what do they always say? They have something they do at the start of the video, and then after the intro you expect them to keep on talking, but it's just fucking silence. It's just them for 17 minutes just sitting there in pure silence, and every once in a while they'll sip from their coffee mug, and then but let's try to avoid that unless it actually is the 1st of April.
Of course.
But
yeah. The thing is, there's a way to have discussions and arguments or debates without it becoming like what are they like criticizing each other, without them becoming conflicts.
Yeah, sure.
And it's definitely getting harder, especially as more people are getting split up into polar opposites in like the past 10 years or so, especially also on the internet a lot. It's becoming more frequent that instead of conversations and debates, it becomes conflict.
Do you think that conflict is as real as it? I specifically I'm talking about conflict on the internet. Do you think that is as real and dangerous as if you and I had a conflict, like a verbal conflict, a dispute right now? Because a lot of the times when I hear people talk about how we're divided on the internet, and someone says one thing that is the polar opposite of the thing you just said, and they have this disagreement that turns into racial slurs or generally just insults. I kind of think to myself, well, is that as bad as people think it is? Because is that even real? Because most of the time I assume, this is just an assumption, I assume that it's just children at home behind a keyboard and writing things. And I think we can handle those kind of disputes just fine. I think the more dangerous thing is when this kind of interaction turns into something that looks like that. That would be fucking dangerous, I think, especially on a broader scale.
Yeah. So I think for the two questions, whether is it bad and is it real, I think it's not real. It's not real conversations because it's the internet. And when we have a conversation, it's much easier to see each other's point of view rather than you see a tweet or a comment on the internet. It's harder to see that this is a person who is probably not that much different than I am if we just sat down and had a conversation. But whether it's bad, I think it's bad like broader, like the whole how this like gets bigger. It's not just a couple of people who do this. It gets to the point where people who can have a conversation in real life can't have it on the internet sometimes. And I think it's just a problem, just like socially and like culturally. It's becoming more of a problem because I think especially like if you look at like American politics, because it's the easiest it's the easiest example of where people get split like so much. You know, it a lot of American politics anymore isn't just two people who are like who just have different values, but they both have the same like goal, you know, of like cooperating to make the country better. It's become like a circus where there's people on way in this side and the people on way on this side, right? And I think the internet has a big part in that, whether it be from like the media, like news sources that have, you know, that want to make money, and then it's just the title is something really the most outrageous thing that they can think of. And then on YouTube videos or Twitter or social media comment sections, one person posts one thing, then other people see it as one thing, and then, you know, back and forth, and it takes away real conversation, you know. And that's the thing why I say it isn't real, you know, compared to a real conversation with a person in real life. You know, we could have completely different ideologies and like values, but once you sit down with a person and you see that they're real, right? I don't think this conflict happens as much, and when it happens, it's not as like one-sided or like unnuanced
No,
as it is like on the internet.
I don't think so either. I agree. I I don't think it's real either. I do have a thing I've thought about sometimes in regard to who it affects the most. You know, this non-real communication on the internet that sometimes turns that sometimes ends in, you know, quite violent disputes. And I've thought about it. You know, I think some introverts who generally don't really speak to a lot of people. I'm speaking of myself here, who spend a lot of time on the internet. I actually don't do that, but some do.
Yeah.
I think it hits them harder in a way that it would maybe a more extroverted person who generally tends to go out and actually talk to people.
Yeah.
And you know, if you live in a small apartment like I do, you don't speak to a bunch of people every day, because that's not the way you kind of refuel your batteries.
Yeah.
And you just see these things on the internet. It is quite easy to just fall into the, well, I guess that's the way the world is now. I guess we are just divided, and I guess it is just conflict. And I guess agreement is a fantasy. You know, that it's easy to fall into that. But then I go out every once in a while whenever the university, you know, creates an event like a party, and we come together, and then I speak to a bunch of different people, and I'm like, what? So wait, so you think about the same way about this subject that I do? Because I just assumed that you did, and I assumed that you were so different, such a different person than I am.
Because like sometimes it takes a conversation to figure that out, you know?
Yeah.
Just in like first sentences together, you know, or like beginning parts of a conversation or first impressions matter a lot, you know? But it's like it's only when we actually talk to people that we actually realize what they're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely the whole thing about, I think the internet just makes a lot of things easier, you know? It makes it easier for people like us who are more introverted to be more free. Not necessarily you and me, but like people out there, it allows people to be more, not free in like an actual free sense, but more free in what they can do. There's not the whole social barrier, you know. And so obviously there's people who are like hateful. They're the people who will just go out saying like racial slurs on the internet, right? But because they can do it because they won't get beat up like they would in real life, you know.
Yeah.
And but those people are they're a different subsection, right? But I also think it affects a lot of people, you know. There's not as much consequence, or like even like consequence, I guess, to like really putting your own opinions out there, you know. It doesn't come with as much like, ooh, like I'm actually doing something big, you know. Like in the real world, if you really want to like present yourself and your own opinions, it can be a big like thing, you know. Like or at least like you're giving parts of your real self to people in the real life who can see you. You're not as isolated. You're not protected by any screen, you know. On the internet, you can just say what you want, you know.
Yeah, and that is a good point. However, I do think there is more plasticity in it when you're speaking with someone in real life, because if I voice my opinion about a certain subject, this person that disagrees with me can immediately argue why she or he disagrees, and then I can listen to that and maybe I can reformulate my opinion. But if I tweet out a tweet about something, maybe it's a controversial opinion. I guess whether it's controversial depends on who reads it. But if I tweet something, it'll just be there. It'll just hang on the wall, and I can delete it. But deleting a tweet has a whole other meaning in people's eyes than reformulating an opinion in interaction. If I delete a tweet, I don't know if that's, I don't use Twitter actually, but I don't know what, if I just remove a tweet that I've tweeted,
Yeah.
it'll be seen as sort of
Yeah, people see it as like you're
cowardice, maybe.
Yeah,
like you're
like
backing down from some, so you're kind of two-faced, huh?
yeah.
Because you delete, so what do you really think? Whereas in real conversation, I can look you in the eye,
Mm-hmm.
and I can just have a human conversation with you and be like, okay, I guess I was wrong. I mean, you really opened my eyes about that subject.
Yeah.
That is quite interesting. But
Yeah.
it's a whole other ball game on social media.
And that's really um yeah, I completely agree. It's people like on the internet interactions are also very slow, you know? You can see a tweet, you can reply to it. Maybe you get an answer, but maybe you do. Or like maybe you don't, but maybe you do. And if you do, it won't be right away.
Mm.
Right? It's like sometimes you have to wait for an answer and then sometimes you say everything you want to, you know? And it's that thing like you can't it's harder to like it's a lot easier to misinterpret someone on the internet, and it's also harder to like reformulate your argument.
Mm.
And even like instances where like in a YouTube video, like a long one where someone has spent a long time formulating their strongest argument, right? They've read through their script again, they've done all these things. At the end of the day, it's still one perspective, and it's like one argument in a sense, right? It's like there isn't the other side, and then the rebuttal, and then another rebuttal. You know, it's like
Definitely. And the thing about people preparing to make a statement, reading up on something, and they feel like they really educated themselves on this certain subject, you gotta remember that the same thing applies to the thing you're actually reading in order to educate yourself on. Like the research that you're reading, maybe it's research or maybe it's just a certain article, is also of the same type of non-plasticity or frozenness of a statement that you will find on most in most tweets. There's not this plasticity of human conversation in what you're reading, and so it's just this spiral where you read something that is frozen, which might not be the case anymore, and then you put out something based on that will also be frozen, and you just get this stacks layers of not exactly a conversation with someone, just frozen statements. I don't know how else to describe it, but
yeah. And we also obviously shouldn't like neglect the good parts, of the internet. Like it has allowed us to,
porn,
of course, and like it's also allowed us to share our opinions with the whole world. It's the internet and social media has allowed us to interact with people from way different places, from different cultures, different countries. It has allowed society in general to just like if I want to learn more about a subject, right, like a deep scientific subject or something, I can go on to databases, I can find research on it, instead of like going to my local library, and if they don't have it, then oh well, I can just, it's hard to figure it out,
yeah,
and also just like in general, it's easier for people to debate each other. It's easier for people around the world to have these conversations. It's just the fact that the internet also comes with the limitations of these conversations often not being real.
Yeah,
You know, it's kind of like
it's a double-edged sword.
yeah, like for most things, there are consequences and there are pros, you know, and
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, those are some of the ones for the internet and social media.
Yeah, there are definitely good parts about, and you know certain sites also, they kind of vary in their usefulness for particular individuals. For me, I'm more of a YouTube guy.
Mm.
You know, we are putting this video out on YouTube, but that's not exactly why I think of myself as a YouTube guy. I just
Yeah.
use it on a
Yeah.
daily basis. I try not to as much anymore because
Mm.
it kind of consumes my time.
Yeah.
But it's Facebook for me, and Twitter, and Instagram, and all those things where it's
Mm.
almost as if they try to mimic what an individual is on a site, through like tweets and posts.
Mm.
I don't really deal with that. The only reason I use Facebook just a little bit is whenever an event that I want to go to is posted on there,
Mm.
that catches my interest. But I think YouTube is kind of it's a bit distinguished in a way because we can do this.
Yeah.
We can actually have a conversation, like a full conversation with each other, and then put it out, and people can see that. And you can do that on Facebook, but let's be honest, that's not exactly what people use Facebook
No,
for.
it's not the main.
It's not. It's not. I mean, it's not really the main podcasting world. I think YouTube for me has always been like the place that I would, if I had to live on a social media platform, I would definitely choose YouTube, even though I know YouTube is far from perfect. We could talk about that actually.
Yeah. In what ways?
I mean, YouTube, as I understand it, has become more corporate over the years.
Of course, yeah.
It you know, it's a thing you often hear.
I mean,
You
all
know.
the big like social media platforms are companies, massive, massive companies. You
Mhm.
know, and naturally there are problems with corporatism just in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But the thing that saddens me about YouTube becoming as corporate as it is today is just the fact that it had a whole other feel at one point in time,
Mm.
whereas it actually lived up to its name. It was YouTube. It was you, the individual, you could unfold your creativity onto this platform in almost any way you desired,
Mm.
and then you just did it. Whereas today you're so censored and you're so limited, I think, and it just saddens me.
In what way are you like censored or limited?
Like there's a lot of things like age restriction. You know, I actually think what was that the YouTuber who made this video recently about racism or favoritism, who sparked this giant debate on YouTube. I don't know if you've been following this.
Was it Gideon or no?
Maybe that was his name, but it was this guy who got his videos. I don't know if it was age restricted or suspended,
Mm.
for including some. I can't really remember it that well, but I think the main thing was that he uploaded a video that others had also uploaded, and they didn't get, you know, that the other people who uploaded this same video, or this video with the same clips in them,
Mm.
they were pushed forward on the recommended thing by the algorithm, and he wasn't, and so he attributed this to YouTube having favorites,
Mm.
or either that or they're racist.
Mm.
I think that was the two choices he kind of gave YouTube in his video. YouTube, either you're playing favorites or you're racist, and and then a bunch of other YouTubers like Jacksepticeye, who's a really big YouTuber,
Very big.
very big, and he started talking about it, and Moist Critical, who, yeah, he, you know, and I don't really know where it is right now, this whole thing, but
Yeah.
it did happen some time ago. But
I mean, the thing is, YouTube is all about the algorithm. So is most social medias. There is an algorithm that decides what content gets pushed out and what content is favored. And the YouTube algorithm has changed a lot over the years. And for better or the worse, people have a lot of criticisms of it. And some people, for example, Mr. Beast, is a person who has like won against the algorithm. He studied the algorithm and he knows exactly what it took to get as far as he did, because it was based on like the algorithm depends on stuff like viewer retention, how many people click on your video, how many likes or dislikes your video has, and a bunch of these different things. And it is a very unforgiving algorithm, because a lot of people, and I don't know about that controversy, so I can't like talk much about that. But if we go further onto like age restriction, why was it? Do you remember why it was age restricted? You said something.
I'm not really, I'm now that I think of, because I'm not sure if it was an age restriction. Um,
Or was it copyright? Or
it could have been copy, or maybe his video was just kind of neglected totally by the algorithm in a way that seemed kind of fishy, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not exactly taking sides here because I don't know enough about it.
Yeah.
I don't know why his video wasn't favored and some others were. I'm just kind of making a point that there definitely are problems on YouTube that are affecting some more than others.
Yeah.
And it's
There's also like, I don't know if it was like a continuous thing that has happened or it was like a one-off video, because I know that like sometimes the algorithm just doesn't work. Like there are people with like millions of subscribers who have uploaded a video and then like it doesn't get sent out to the people with notifications. It ends up with like 1,000 views for someone who gets millions of views.
But is that a frequent thing?
No.
Do you know?
But was that?
I don't think that was it, because I don't think it would have resonated with so many other YouTubers if it wasn't a frequent thing.
I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, it's quite. I don't know if it's still like a. It almost seemed like a movement for a second, and I don't know if it still is moving. But
yeah,
it's.
Yeah, but if we talk about like age restriction and censorship, I mean the YouTube like age restriction, I feel like it has to be there because there is porn on YouTube.
Yeah,
pretty much.
certainly. But do you feel like age restriction is kind of used incorrectly sometimes on the platform?
In what
like,
way?
Like why is this? For example, if there's a violent video game, I feel for someone who has grown up playing violent video games, I sometimes notice that some video games of the more violent sort get age restricted. You know, when a let's player like Markiplier maybe makes a video about playing a quite violent video game, and it's age restricted, I just kind of think, why? Because who exactly do you think you're saving here?
Yeah.
Like,
but I mean I guess that's like a bigger just debate in general. It's been there for a long time, you know, about like what is age restricted and what is not. And it's been a long time thing with like video games, you know, people being like video games are harmful for kids, and especially the very violent ones, you know. And I don't think YouTube really has a stance on it. For them, because they're a massive company, it's about like ads, and it's about the companies who have ads on YouTube. Yeah. You know, there are things that are ad friendly, and that's for a reason, because certain companies don't want their products advertised on a video where people are getting their heads chopped off, and even though like it might not make much sense to us, you know, but that's why like you can't advertise, like you can't put ads on your video if it's age restricted.
Yeah, exactly, and that. So the thing about if it's a violent video game like GTA, and someone gets their head cut off, I don't know even know if you can do that in one of the games.
I don't know.
Even if you could, I've obviously never run a company, so I guess I can't really. I don't have much experience in that regard, but I would just think that it's not like I watch a Coca-Cola ad on a video where someone plays GTA and I'm like, no, I'll never drink a Coke again because they put an ad on a video where someone killed a hooker. Like, I don't even want to associate myself with Coca-Cola after this shit. I mean, so I don't really get the logic. Is it just because they're trying to?
Well, I think like GTA is because a lot of people play GTA on YouTube, and that's fine. It's not one of those kinds of games, and I mean, it's for a long time been a problem with who gets demonetized and who doesn't. Like because I watch a lot of the Sidemen videos.
Yeah.
They've talked extensively about like, because like swearing has become more and more like looked down upon by YouTube over the years, especially with like, it's something like in the first 30 seconds to a minute of your video, you shouldn't say any swear words if you want to stay monetized. But it's also like they've been demonetized a lot for saying cunt, which is something we can say because we're not monetized.
We're not big enough, so
Yeah,
cunt.
right. Which is a very typical like British slur, you know.
You daft cunt.
Yeah, it's like and shit is also for some reason like very frowned upon or like unad friendly. But then there's like other YouTubers that say these words and nothing happens, right? There's YouTubers like Speed, if you know Speed.
I've heard of Speed.
It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the last
yeah.
like couple months
He's
like,
very hyper in his
yes,
video, isn't he?
right, and he's had some like insane moments, right? Like some things he does is just like crazy, and people think like, but he stays monetized and stuff. Sometimes he gets banned and stuff because he does weird stuff. But it's like, you know, some people will do something outrageous and then it's like, oh, you can still have ads, and then someone will say a word like cunt and then it's like demonetized. So it's very it's not very, how would you say, like consistent.
No.
The whole thing about, but it is really down to like ads, and that's like I think a lot of people try to attribute like morals and ideology to companies when in reality it's about money, you know.
Yeah.
It's like and that's also why there's a terms of service, you know. It's would like, I mean, hopefully there's some people on YouTube who don't want people around being like hateful and saying the N-word everywhere, right? But it's like the real point of a terms of service is because they're not going to get it. No company's going to want to advertise their stuff on the page if they don't have some sort of like terms of service, so that people can't just say whatever they want. They can't just, you know, do whatever they want on the on the platform, because then they wouldn't make money.
Sure, but couldn't you just limit that to speaking ill of your product instead of like trying to stop people from saying words like shit, like you said?
Yeah.
Like can you not then make a more clear distinction between what is clearly negative, what would you call it?
Like effects or
Yeah, or negative influences on the sales of your product and just people, you know, using their First Amendment. You know, it can't you, why something like, because it's rarely I hear a YouTuber actually speaking. You know, they always kiss the ass of these companies' products, like, oh, this product, you know, it's I really use this every day and I see nothing but positivity about it. But yeah. I think and then I think that should be it. Okay, you did your part. Don't so as long as you don't speak ill of the thing, the product, I think you should be free. Yeah. Be free to use words like shit and.
But I think in those cases it's different because those are sponsorships which are outside of YouTube. Like when you upload a YouTube video, there's an option where it's like you have to like say whether or not there's paid advertisement in this video from like an outside. Because sponsorships often, like a lot of people are demonetized because they'll swear and stuff. But they can still have a sponsorship, right, from like an outside source. But it's like YouTube's ads, like the ads that are on YouTube. That's where like demonetization comes in. Like there are a lot of people who still get sponsorships, so they like there's still ads on their video, but not like, it's not the YouTube ads where it's like, oh, ad in 5 seconds, you know, and then you can skip and stuff. But yeah, but those ads are the ones that YouTube controls, and that's like if you say cunt in the first 30 seconds, you might get demonetized.
Yeah, and I can't really understand that either, to be honest.
Yeah.
Just because I mean it didn't always used to be that way.
No.
Right? In the what was the big thing that hit YouTube? The whole what's it in 2016? I think some people attributed the whole change to what did they call it? The apocalypse. I think that's what they called it. You've never heard of that? The adpocalypse. I think it was when PewDiePie made a, you know, the controversial video where he was wearing this Nazi vest and he made very controversial jokes. and but I don't know if that's what started this whole adpocalypse thing.
I think it's probably just more that like the bigger the company got, you know, and like the internet changed. When YouTube first came around, like the internet was still relatively new for a lot of people. It's not like it is now, you know. It was more of like a Wild West still then, you know. And what am I trying to say? I guess it's just because, you know, that to make more money, it's what they had to do, you know. It's not so much about like keeping the keep making sure everyone can say what they want, and like let's keep integrity of like what we used to do. It's
No, that's not exactly what it
like
damn, but
I think it is just very attributable to money. Like, you know, every big corporation, it's
of
what they
course,
try to do.
of course, but couldn't you imagine a world where it's not like they would go broke if they kept their integrity, and,
No.
and they so I could imagine a world where they might even be just as rich while keeping their integrity without having it be so prioritized to money and making more money all the time, because I think integrity in the way we're talking about it right now is highly undervalued. I think that personally, I think that would bring more eyes on YouTube as a platform than anything else if they just kept being who they were. Of course, change is necessary in order to revise your platform and eventual mistakes, and you have to grow as a platform and make sure that you know it's a comfortable space for their creators and their YouTubers. But
Yeah. But I think it's like, even though we think that like, oh, if they had more integrity, more people would want to be on the platform. I don't know if like they'd make more money. You know, it's
I
like,
don't think they
like
would make more money.
no, because I don't think they would even make as much money. Like
Mm.
the way they're going is how they're trying to maximize their profit, you know? Like obviously there's some things they give back to people. Like they have a decent split for like streamers and the money they make, you know? Like for example, Twitch takes 50-50. Like they take 50 of what streamers make from like super chats and donations. YouTube takes 30. You know?
Yeah.
Like there are things where they're better than others, but
Yeah,
at the
sure.
end but at the end of the day, it's not because they're like they care about the creators that much. It's because then they know people will choose YouTube over Twitch, and then their money will still go up, you know, like,
Which is a smart decision, but
but
it's
like, and I think that's just how we need to view a lot of big companies, you know.
yeah, sure,
A
sure.
lot of companies that like try to do something similar, but like do it in a different way, like a different way where they're not as focused on like making money, right? Either those companies like just don't get anywhere, or oftentimes they grow and they get quite popular until they get bought by the bigger one. That's how most like what happens to most companies, most startup companies, like people who create companies try to get to like that point where they get bought by a big company for like millions of dollars, you know? Because the biggest companies, they don't want competition.
But then if that's the goal from the start, to be bought out by a big company,
It is
then I
all-
guess it's still money oriented and not.
but it isn't always, right? A lot of companies are like start out with like, we want to be the next new thing. There's these things that we want to change, right? So they make a company, but then like 5 years into it, you get a thing where it's like, oh, we want to buy you for $3 billion. A lot of people aren't gonna say no to that, right?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Like even if you're like don't like YouTube, right? You've made this company to go against YouTube, or be it like Coca-Cola or Disney, one of those massive companies, right? That like buy others. Like most people aren't gonna say no to.
So what do you want? Do you want a short-lived life as a platform with what some would consider integrity, or do you want a richer life, and not do you want a longer lifespan with with a more money-oriented vision, I guess you could say?
Yeah.
Like, what would you rather have? I mean, I guess you could also that dilemma, that decision. I guess you could also make a parallel to. This might be a weird parallel, but to TV series.
Yeah.
Do you want to keep making money off this TV show and just keep making seasons for all eternity, or do you want to have a certain point where you stop?
Yeah.
And then, like, Breaking Bad, it stopped at the point it should have stopped.
Yeah.
And then there's a TV show which I actually like, because I used to watch it when I was little. but you know, The Walking Dead is at like fucking 11 seasons now.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy. 11 seasons.
And things like Simpsons and South Park.
And Simpsons and
going.
Yeah, and a lot of these shows, in my opinion, should have stopped quite some time ago. But there's whole other things associated with that, and that might also just be sentimentality from some of these creators.
Yeah.
Like, I can't let go of this thing. Like Matt and Trey Parker when it comes to South Park.
Yeah.
I totally get why. By the way, South Park, I haven't watched that show in quite some time, but that show was a fucking banger.
Great show.
Great show. So funny. But a lot of these, I wouldn't want to have to make the decision myself when to sort of almost kill my baby.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if it's like, it's not a story that has to end, you know? Like with Breaking Bad, you know, I feel like they had a plan from the beginning. You know, it's like, it has to stop here, you know? But with this whole, like, there's a big, like, debate about, like, Disney movies where it's like, because Disney makes a lot of animated movies, but they've started making, like, remakes, like, live action remakes of their old ones. Like, they made, like, the Lion King remake, which, and a lot of these live action remakes feel like cash grabs because they don't capture the magic of the old ones. Like yeah, they look cool. Like the Lion King, it looks like real animals, right? But there's no emotion. There's no like heart and soul in it. But like, and they still make really good animated movies. Like in recent memory, like Moana and like previously like Encanto from last year.
I haven't watched that one.
No, but like it was very good, and like it, and people still really like their animated movies, you know. But it's like there's just when they make those live action movies that are remakes. Yeah. Oftentimes, because they also make a lot of money. Like
I bet they do.
Almost all of them make over $1 billion in like the box office, right? And it's like you can clearly see when like creativity has been kind of put on like the second, like to the side compared to like the money. You know, like this needs like we want a product that sells, and then we also want it to be decent. You know, rather than we want it to make something that's amazing.
Definitely. You can definitely feel the difference, the distinction in that. Although I do think I can appreciate if you're making like a live action of the fucking Lion King and you're doing it to recapture a certain feeling that your fans had or just the people who loved the movie had all those years ago when it first came out. I can sort of respect that intention, but usually it just ends badly. And I also suspect that isn't the main motivator of doing it. You know, I do think it is the money.
Yeah.
Mainly, but of course they'll be like, get ready to see your old friends. You know, it's been such a long time, and then you see Simba being held up. You know, this isn't how I remember it. It's live action. You know, it's not even beautiful, but
like they don't have faces. I don't know if you've seen. Like,
I actually haven't seen it.
No, it's like. Because some animated movies like some live action where it's CGI still make it look some kind of animated, right? But these look like real animals, like real lions that don't change their faces. When they talk to each other, their faces don't change. You know, when Simba's like, he first hears like the stampede coming towards him in the original, and he sees them and he goes like his face gets like he, you know, it gets really shocked.
Yeah.
In the live action, it just stares at it and then just runs away. Like
because they need to have a certain point of realism to these fucking lions. It would just be comedic if the lion's eyes were
right. Yeah. Like it looks great. Like and that's the thing when we talk about this, the people who are making it, like the animators and like the CG, like the people making the CGI and the voice and everything, they're still like passionate. You know, they're still doing a great job. We're more talking about like the highest level, like the executive directors. They're the ones who are sitting there like what can we do now?
That money grab, you know.
Exactly, like, but maybe I'm wrong because these movies do make a lot of money, and that means people go to see them. You know, but like generally, I think the reviews aren't great. Like people don't love them as much as the originals. You know.
No, and I almost think that's also impossible to achieve.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we've spoken about, you know, live action adaptations of anime, which, by the way, is almost always an adaptation of an adaptation.
Yeah.
but that usually never works either.
No.
Because it's just not, you're stripping away a certain thing that makes the show great. Like it being anime is just so integral in itself that when you take that away, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
And I don't really get the money, right? I get it. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
But I haven't watched The Lion King, the live action version of The Lion King, but I would hope that movie seemed to have more creative inspiration than do some of these anime adaptations like Death Note.
I mean, it's better. Like, I enjoyed The Lion King more than Death Note, but it's one that feels kind of like a completely middle movie, you know? It's like, it's not bad. It's just not anything great. And there are probably people out there who love it, you know? I'm sure there are, and that's great, you know? But it's just like, I don't know, like you said, when you take away animation from an animated like property, you're taking out a lot of what makes it special, you know?
Yeah.
Like and I think a lot of people don't appreciate animation enough. Like a lot of people see animation as cartoons, like kids things, right? But animation can do things that live action and CGI just can't.
Definitely.
Storytelling in just animation itself is amazing. Not to talk about the things you can do in anime, right? Like the things that happen, right?
When you see Eren from Attack on Titan just fucking fly through Shiganshina on these what seems like little wires, and they just fucking slashed the nape of some random Titan, you know, and then you just see the camera like almost this traveling shot. Whereas, bro, you could probably try to recreate that in real life, and it would look dope as fuck. But would it look as pretty with all the lighting and all the animation and all that? Could you recapture that? Maybe. I mean, technology has come a long way.
Have you ever seen the live action Attack on Titan? It's like a Japanese version.
I didn't even know there was one.
The Titan, or like the Titans look really funny.
Yeah, just show me a picture.
Yeah, wait, let me just.
But is it like it's like a series or a movie or?
I don't know what it is actually. I think it's a movie.
Oh, those look disgusting.
Wait, let me just.
But that actually looks dope.
This one
Wait, so this is actually a thing that's happening.
It has happened in like 2015. The thing is, honestly, the best thing about it is some of the Titans. They look like creepy, which they should, you know. But it's like, okay, first of all, the Colossal Titan looks.
I mean, he looks a bit like a SpongeBob character,
yeah.
but you know.
But like.
But can you go to the picture of the fucking crew? No, right there, the
there.
crew. So this is a thing.
Yeah.
That happened, because I've completely missed this.
Yeah, it's just like, and the thing is, typically like the Japanese live action remakes are like of anime are better, than like the ones we make in the West, you know, like compared to Death Note. They're typically better, but they're still not like when you take away the animation, it just, especially if you don't have a massive budget, you know.
Yeah, it's just other than the goal of making money, I can't really see how you would ever do that and think that you can actually make it better than the anime itself. Yeah. If that's your main motivation, like I want to make something that is superior in many ways to the anime. I'm like, well, you know,
like you can
just don't waste your time.
Like you can do things differently, you know.
Yeah, and that the differently thing, I think that's a way that you can sort of succeed, not in making it better than the anime, but it's almost as if you're just, the goal of doing it is just getting away with it. That's like the thing. You just want to survive. You want to have your reputation as a director. You just want to fucking get away with it.
Yeah.
But that, at least I think that would be my main motivation if I were to do a thing like, okay, just fucking let me survive this, bro. I can't.
It's also because they always choose like iconic movies or TV shows, you know. Like they take The Lion King, they take Attack on Titan,
That's where that's the most money, you know.
Of course, yeah. Like a lot of like live action things are made on like animated things that not many people know, and those typically do a bit better, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah. So if they haven't watched the anime first, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know? Like we all know Attack on Titan. We all know Death Note, you know? And we know that it's amazing. And then we watch it and there's just not really any point to
But
like a live action.
do you think a person who watches the live action Death Note and they they see Mr. Yagami screaming in that fucking room at the start of the movie, like, oh! You know that shit. Do you think that a person who hasn't watched Death Note would be like, would think that's good acting or that's great?
No. But I think Death Note, the live action movie, is better if you don't know what it's like the original is.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
So
mean it's not better, but I think people perceive it as,
yeah.
or at least it's not as bad. I think
I
that's
think
what
more people will like it more, right?
Yeah.
Or because like it's still not a great movie, but like it's pretty shit. But
Meanwhile, there's someone sitting out there right now who has just watched it without watching the anime. And it's like, I fucking love it. I actually enjoyed it.
sitting with his own Death Note.
Yeah, and they're writing. You don't even know our names, you fucker. So you can. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's,
It was just the elephant in the room. We're wearing the same colored shirts. It was not planned. It's not like a thing that's gonna happen every week.
well, also another thing is both of us don't have any pants on. That's also a thing we do have pants on. Why would you would?
It's weird. Well,
Do you think it's stylish? Do you think it gives us a certain vibe, like the same shirt with the same what do you call it?
style.
Style.
I don't know. We should just match every time.
I don't think I'll allow that. I think I'll actually
Go home.
I mean, yeah, and you like I would be freaked out if every time I came up here, you would be wearing the exact same thing. I would be like, what the fuck is going on? Like yeah, that would be weird.
That would be weird. Yeah.
How we doing inside?
I think we're about to be there, so maybe we should start wrapping up.
All right. Well, I hope this has given if anyone does listen to this, I hope it has given them like an idea of that this is just a place where we just wanted to be as raw a conversation as possible. I think that's just like we said at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going for. But yeah, thank you if anyone listened, and if not,
yeah. Well, just then we can just do what we really want.
to just talk. All right. Goodbye.